January 14th, 1942, North Atlantic. Night presses down over the conning tower of U-553 as the submarine rises through a rolling field of winter swells. Frost clings to the steel rails. The sea is calm in the way only the mid-Atlantic can be, dark, empty, and seemingly endless. Below deck, a young German radio operator wipes condensation from his headphones and leans toward the dim glow of a single red lamp. A message crackles through the ether, sharp and metallic, bouncing across thousands of miles of ocean. He threads the paper through the Enigma. 3 rotors click into place. The plugboard cables hang like veins beneath the polished machine. To him, this is the safest moment of the patrol. Encrypted, scrambled, sealed behind mathematics and machinery, the message feels untouchable. The officer beside him waits confidently, trusting a system the German Navy believes no enemy can penetrate. Outside, the Atlantic wind hisses against the hull, unaware that far across the ocean, inside quiet rooms filled with chalk dust, cigarette smoke, and humming electromechanical devices, the Allies are slowly assembling the tools that will one day make this message, and thousands like it, perfectly clear. A clarity that will change the course of the war. Long before the message aboard U-553 crackled into the cold night, the foundations of its encryption had been laid in a very different world. The Enigma machine did not begin as a weapon of war. It emerged in the late 1920s as a commercial device, an invention meant for banks, businesses, and diplomats who needed privacy in an age when radio was replacing cables and couriers. Its polished keys, interchangeable rotors, and shifting electrical pathways promised something revolutionary: secure communication at the speed of transmission. Few noticed, fewer cared, but among those who did were the militaries of Europe, especially a Germany rearming beneath the guise of recovery. By the early 1930s, the German Navy, Army, and eventually the Luftwaffe adopted their own modified versions of Enigma. They strengthened it: new rotors, daily changing keys, plugboard wiring, and procedures that made every message a fleeting moment of security. With each keystroke, the machine transformed a plain text letter into one of 26 others, routed through internal circuits that shifted position after every press. Mathematically, the number of possible settings soared into the trillions. To German officers, this complexity rendered Enigma impregnable. Yet in a quiet set of rooms in Warsaw, a small team had already begun peeling away that illusion. Poland's Cipher Bureau, led by mathematicians Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Różycki, and Henryk Zygalski, applied pure mathematics to a problem most nations still approached with linguists and classic cryptographic intuition. In 1932, using permutation theory, Rejewski reconstructed the internal wiring of the Enigma rotors, a breakthrough so improbable that even today it stands as one of the most elegant achievements in cryptanalysis. Over the next several years, Poland built its own machines, decrypted German messages, and tracked the increasingly aggressive posture of Nazi Germany. But as German procedures improved, including the vital introduction of the plugboard, the Polish advantage began to fade. By 1938-39, decryption required more than mathematics. It demanded machines, devices capable of rapidly testing rotor settings and plugboard combinations. Poland designed early versions, but lacked the industrial capacity for mass production. With war looming, the Polish Cipher Bureau made a decision that would shape the coming conflict. They shared everything: reconstructed rotors, methods, papers, and devices with Britain and France. In July 1939, in a forest clearing near Warsaw, the transfer took place. The British delegation returned to London carrying the intellectual seed that would eventually become the heart of Allied codebreaking. When Germany invaded Poland in September, many of the Polish cryptanalysts fled, some eventually joining Allied efforts from abroad. But their early work had already given Britain a vital head start. At Bletchley Park, a Victorian mansion hastily converted into a wartime intelligence center. British mathematicians, linguists, and engineers took the Polish foundations and expanded them. Alan Turing and Gordon Welchman designed the electromechanical bombs, massive machines capable of testing rotor settings at unprecedented speed. With ease, the British could search for cribs, predictable phrases hidden inside German messages, and gradually extract keys that unlocked entire streams of encrypted traffic. Yet even with the Polish advantage and Turing's innovations, the effort was far from steady success. German operators changed procedures frequently. New rotors appeared. Indicator systems shifted. The Luftwaffe and Navy used different variants. The naval Enigma, particularly the version used by U-boats, proved the most challenging of all, protected by strict discipline and long-distance communication that resisted pattern discovery. Still, small victories accumulated. Weather reports, routine logistics messages, airfield schedules. Each breakthrough gave the Allies a clearer picture of how the German war machine functioned, but decryption remained inconsistent. Some days yielded dozens of solved messages, others produced none. The cryptanalysts worked with urgency, knowing every word they deciphered might save ships, crews, or cities. Then came a development that would change both the scale and the speed of Allied codebreaking: the entry of the United States into the war. As 1941 ended and 1942 began, Germany expanded its U-boat offensives across the Atlantic. Convoys disappeared into the ocean without warning. Merchant ships burned along the American coastline. The Allies needed not just British ingenuity, but enormous industrial capacity, something only the United States possessed at the scale required. The stage was set for an unprecedented partnership, and for the moment when Enigma, once considered unbreakable, would begin to reveal its secrets on both sides of the Atlantic.
The entry of the United States into the war in December 1941 transformed the landscape of global cryptanalysis. Before then, Bletchley Park had carried the burden of deciphering Enigma largely alone, supported by the earlier Polish contributions, but challenged by limited resources, limited workforce, and an ever-growing stream of intercepted transmissions. With the U.S. now fully engaged, the Allies could merge British experience with American industrial power, unlocking a scale of code breaking that had never existed before. American cryptanalysis had been evolving quietly for years. The U.S. Navy's OP-20G, its code-breaking unit, operated from the Naval Communications Annex on Nebraska Avenue in Washington, D.C. The building, a converted girls' school, soon filled with rows of desks, typewriters, punch card machines, and a rapidly expanding workforce that included both Navy officers and an increasing number of talented civilian recruits, many of them women. Among them were graduates from small universities who had been identified through aptitude tests in mathematics, logic, and pattern recognition. They were trained quickly, assigned specialized roles, and integrated into a workflow that demanded relentless precision. As Britain shared its knowledge of Enigma decryption, methods, wiring details, procedural weaknesses, the United States began producing its own bombs. Unlike the British machines, which used rotating drums to simulate Enigma rotors, the American bombs employed faster, more powerful motors and took advantage of the country's manufacturing infrastructure. Dozens were built by the National Cash Register Company in Dayton, Ohio, under the leadership of engineer Joseph Desch. The facility operated in secrecy, guarded by military police, and consumed a vast amount of electrical power. By mid-1943, American bombs ran day and night, generating solutions that were transmitted directly to naval intelligence units. This surge in capability arrived at a crucial moment. German U-boat operations, controlled by Admiral Karl Donitz, relied heavily on Enigma encrypted radio messages. Submarines spread across the Atlantic reported convoy sightings, fuel status, and attack instructions. Donitz orchestrated his wolf packs with precision, concentrating forces at key choke points to disrupt Allied supply lines. Throughout early 1942, this strategy proved devastating. Shipping losses reached catastrophic levels. Entire convoys were savaged. The United States, caught unprepared along its coastline during Operation Drumbeat, lost hundreds of ships within months. Each sinking reinforced Germany's confidence. Interception didn't matter. The messages were encrypted. The system was secure. That belief shaped their doctrine. Yet, the Allies were quietly closing the gap. British interception stations, known as Y stations, captured countless transmissions daily. American stations along the East Coast and in the Caribbean added their own streams. Shared databases of call signs, frequencies, and time patterns began to merge. Between 1942 and 1943, the volume of intercepted traffic doubled, then doubled again. Every signal, no matter how trivial, offered potential insight. At Bletchley Park, Hut 8 continued to focus on naval Enigma, while American teams concentrated on systematic rotor search methods and machine building efficiency. Messages were divided by fleet, region, or U-boat group. Analysts compared phrasing, operator habits, and statistical quirks. Some German radio operators reused words under stress. Others failed to follow strict key change procedures. A few relied on predictable formatting. These human errors, repeated across thousands of transmissions, allowed cryptanalysis to construct new cribs and exploit weaknesses that pure mathematics alone could not uncover. Meanwhile, the collaboration between the Allies deepened. In 1942, the British and Americans formalized their cooperation through secret agreements, deciding to divide responsibilities rather than duplicate efforts. The British retained leadership in deciphering Atlantic and Mediterranean naval traffic. The Americans focused on the Pacific, especially Japanese naval codes, but soon became heavily involved in European machine decryption as well, contributing essential processing power and personnel. Information flowed across secure channels, carried by couriers and encrypted cables. Joint working groups analyzed decrypted material to determine its relevance to battlefield operations, convoy protection, and long-term strategy. The increase in decrypted intelligence began to alter the direction of the war. Convoy routings grew more precise. Aircraft patrol areas received more accurate search grids. Anti-submarine groups were vectored toward U-boat locations, unknowingly exposed through decoded messages. Each success encouraged further expansion, further investment, and deeper integration between British and American cryptanalytic operations. But the Allies were only beginning to understand the scale of what Enigma could provide. Every message successfully decrypted, every weather report, situation update, and submarine position revealed another piece of the German war machine. As the volume of solutions grew, the Allies gained not just tactical advantages, but an emerging strategic picture of Germany's assumptions, vulnerabilities, and operational rhythm. By early 1943, the cryptanalytic partnership had become a defining feature of Allied intelligence. The effort was enormous, the stakes were absolute, and the consequences would ripple far beyond the Atlantic. The moment was approaching when the Axis powers would not only be challenged, but blindfolded by the very machine they trusted most.
Inside the crowded huts of Bletchley Park and the Naval Communications Annex in Washington, the war unfolded not with weapons, but with pencils, paper, and an unending stream of encrypted radio traffic. The codebreakers were young, many between 18 and 25, recruited from universities, teaching colleges, small-town high schools, and clerical offices. They worked shifts that rarely aligned with the rhythms of day or night. The pressure was unrelenting. Every decrypted message carried the potential to redirect convoys, protect shipping lanes, or expose U-boat ambushes. Every missed message risked leaving sailors unprepared in the open sea. Women formed a majority of the workforce. In the U.S., they were waves. Women accepted for volunteer emergency service, trained rapidly to operate bombs, analyze cipher patterns, and manage punch card systems. In Britain, they came from the Women's Royal Naval Service, the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, and civilian life. Their roles, though often overlooked in wartime reporting, were indispensable. They monitored rotor stop results, traced logic paths across cipher tables, and prepared thousands of intercepts for specialist analysts. The emotional weight was immense. They knew the impact of failure could be measured in shipwrecked crews and unreturned convoys. Yet these rooms also held a kind of quiet determination. The cryptanalysts rarely knew the outcomes of their work, but they understood its significance. Churchill's personal visits, brief and unannounced, offered rare confirmation. This place mattered. The United States echoed this motivation, driven by both urgency and rapidly growing capacity. In both nations, the people behind the code-breaking effort became the invisible front line of the intelligence war. Their human persistence was the foundation of every later breakthrough. To the German military, Enigma represented mathematical invulnerability. Its defense lay in complexity, interchangeable rotors, a constantly shifting electrical pathway, and a plug board that introduced additional permutations. Each message began with a unique key. Each day introduced a new rotor order and plug board configuration. The theoretical number of possible combinations reached astronomical levels. German cryptographers believed that without the correct daily keys, intercepting nations would face a computational problem far beyond their capabilities. What Germany underestimated was the convergence of mathematics, engineering, and industrial-scale mechanization within the Allied effort. The Polish breakthroughs had already pierced the fundamental structure of Enigma. Bletchley Park's bombs expanded this foundation, using racks of rotating drums to simulate rotor positions and eliminate impossible combinations. But it was the American bombs that tipped the balance. Faster, more powerful, and produced in large numbers, they shifted the Allies from sporadic decryption to systematic access. In practice, Enigma's strength relied on operator discipline. Every deviation, repeated phrases, predictable formatting, or incorrect key setting created openings. Weather reports became particularly valuable. German meteorological messages used consistent wording and timing, allowing cryptanalysts to locate cribs with higher reliability. Routine procedures, such as call sign lists or standard introductions, further reduced the theoretical complexity. The German belief in Enigma's unbreakability persisted because the system appeared rigid. In reality, its vulnerability lay in human behavior, predictable routines, and the Allies' ability to scale computational analysis beyond anything Germany imagined. Within the Kriegsmarine, Enigma was not just a tool, it was a doctrine. Admiral Donitz, who oversaw the U-boat fleet, relied on its secrecy to manage wolf packs across vast stretches of ocean. German captains trusted the machine implicitly. They changed keys at midnight. They guarded rotors and codebooks closely. They believed that even if Allied forces intercepted their signals, the mathematical fortress of Enigma made interpretation impossible. This overconfidence influenced every aspect of German naval strategy. U-boats transmitted more frequently than they might have otherwise, reporting sightings, positions, fuel levels, and detailed movement instructions. Coordination required communication, and communication required trust. German commanders were confident enough in encryption to broadcast highly sensitive operational details, including planned attack routes and rendezvous points. Compounding this vulnerability, the Germans misinterpreted Allied countermeasures. When convoys unexpectedly altered course or evaded wolf packs, the Kriegsmarine attributed it to radar advances, improved aerial patrols, or random luck. Few suspected a compromise in cryptographic security. Even as losses mounted later in the war, German investigations focused on perimeter breaches, spies, or British direction-finding accuracy, not the heart of the system itself. This faith in Enigma's invulnerability allowed the Allies to gather more intelligence than Germany ever imagined they were revealing.
When the United States entered the war, its cryptanalytic organization, OP-20-G, was still relatively small. But within months, it expanded into one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations in the world. Housed in the Naval Communications Annex in Washington, D.C., the facility became a labyrinth of decoding rooms, punched card indexing systems, and increasingly advanced machinery. As German U-boat activity intensified along the American East Coast, the pressure on U.S. cryptanalysts grew. Thousands of WAVES recruits arrived after passing aptitude exams that tested abstract reasoning, musical pattern recognition, and linguistic intuition. Many had never seen a cipher machine before joining. Within weeks, they became experts in managing bomb operations, wiring test menus, maintaining machine accuracy, and cross-referencing solutions with the rapidly expanding catalog of German call signs. Their contribution gave OP-20G the manpower it needed to run machines continuously, feeding solutions to naval intelligence teams
that were designing new convoy routes and hunting patterns. Cooperation with Britain accelerated the speed of progress. British couriers traveled to Washington, carrying decrypted material, machine specifications, and rotor wiring diagrams. In return, American bombs, faster and more numerous, sent their rotor stop results back across the Atlantic. For the first time, both nations were working on the same enemy system with synchronized processes. This partnership ensured that no Enigma variant would remain safe for long. Beyond the math and code-breaking work, the fight against Enigma turned into a full industrial effort. Germany depended on one machine with only small upgrades, while the Allies built a whole network of factories, machines, and thousands of workers focused entirely on cracking it. In Dayton, Ohio, the National Cash Register Company transformed its factories into high-security production sites. Under the guidance of engineer Joseph Desch, NCR workers built the American bombs, large enclosed machines powered by precision motors capable of cycling through rotor positions at tremendous speed. Their design represented a leap forward from the British bombs. Instead of simulating rotor movement with adjustable drums, they used electronic switching systems that dramatically reduced the time required to test rotor settings. Each machine required thousands of individual components and meticulous calibration. Technicians worked long hours under intense secrecy, unable to discuss their tasks even with their families. Armed guards patrolled the halls. Every part was tracked. Every test run was recorded. By late 1943, dozens of bombs operated simultaneously in the U.S., giving OP-20G the ability to process German naval keys in a matter of hours, not days. This industrial surge was something Germany could not match. While the Kriegsmarine continued refining its operational tactics, the Allies were refining their machines, and the machines multiplied faster than any German cryptographer could adapt. Every new bomb built tightened the pressure on Enigma's defenses. The ultimate value of breaking Enigma lay not in understanding the German system, but in applying decrypted intelligence to the battlefield. As the volume of solutions increased, the Allies learned more about German intentions, deployments, and weaknesses. This transformed daily operations across multiple theaters. In the Atlantic, decrypted signals revealed U-boat refueling schedules, patrol lines, attack rendezvous points, and even internal debates within the Kriegsmarine. Convoys could now be rerouted with precision. Hunter-killer groups, naval formations built around escort carriers, sailed directly toward submarine concentrations. Long-range aircraft from Newfoundland, Iceland, and West Africa flew search patterns informed by decrypted traffic, not guesswork. The ocean, once a vast and unpredictable battlefield, became clearer through every solved message. The Mediterranean also benefited. Luftwaffe supply flights into Tunisia, Italian naval movements through the Central Sea, and German troop reinforcements heading toward North Africa were tracked through intercepted messages. These decrypts played a role in the defeat of Axis forces at Al Alamein and their eventual surrender in Tunisia. Air missions targeted transport aircraft, warships intercepted supply convoys, ground commanders received warnings of enemy troop concentrations. Further east, even on the distant Russian front, insights obtained from Enigma helped Allied planners understand German force distribution, logistical strain, and upcoming offensives. Although direct decrypts were shared cautiously with the Soviets, the strategic picture informed Allied decision-making in all theaters. By mid-1943, Allied intelligence officers began realizing the full scale of their achievement. They were reading German communications with a consistency that bordered on near real-time access. Messages once considered unreachable were now contributing directly to the defeat of the U-boat fleet and the collapse of Axis supply chains. The steady flow of intelligence built toward a decisive moment, a turning point when German confidence in Enigma would become their greatest vulnerability.
By early 1943, the flow of decrypted Enigma traffic reached a level the Allies had never seen before. The new American bombs worked around the clock, feeding rotor-stop data to analysts who cross-checked it with British decrypts arriving from Bletchley Park. The result was unprecedented: a steady stream of German naval messages, translated and distributed to Allied command centers, often within hours of transmission. The timing could not have been more critical. Across the Atlantic, Admiral Karl Dönitz launched a renewed U-boat offensive. Dozens of submarines were dispatched into the mid-ocean air gap, the region too far from land for Allied aircraft to patrol effectively. This area had been a killing ground since 1941. Convoys entered it with limited protection and even less intelligence. The Kriegsmarine believed the gap remained secure, and that Enigma ensured perfect secrecy inside it. But for the first time, the Allies saw everything: every U-boat patrol line, every shift in Wolfpack position, every refueling rendezvous, every operational intention sent from German naval headquarters. Decrypts revealed a massive coordinated effort planned for March and April 1943, designed to cut Allied supply lines to Britain during a period when food, ammunition, and fuel reserves were dangerously low. German submarines formed dense patrol screens across key convoy routes, confident they were undetected. The Kriegsmarine had increased the number of boats at sea and extended operations into deeper waters. To Dönitz, the coming months promised a final opportunity to regain control of the Atlantic. What he did not know was that his every order reached Allied desks almost as quickly as it reached the submarines. In London, the Admiralty's Operational Intelligence Center, OIC, used decrypted Enigma signals to map U-boat deployments in near real time. These maps were sent to convoy planners who began adjusting routes in subtle but decisive ways. Convoys RA-52, HX-229, SC-122, and dozens more shifted their tracks without the Germans realizing why. Instead of stumbling into wolf packs, many passed through gaps between them, gaps created precisely because Allied planners knew where the submarines would be. Meanwhile, in Washington, OP-20G compiled decrypted reports into daily briefings delivered directly to the Chief of Naval Operations. Escort carrier groups, destroyer squadrons, and long-range aircraft were deployed with precision, hunting submarines before they could strike. Aircrews flying from Newfoundland, Greenland, and the Azores received exact coordinates for patrol zones where submarines had recently transmitted situation reports, often revealing their positions without realizing it. This was the moment when intelligence began dictating operations, not the other way around. As March 1943 unfolded, a massive clash formed around convoys HX-229 and SC-122. German submarines, over 40 strong, moved toward the convoys expecting a decisive victory. Dönitz planned to break Allied morale with a single catastrophic attack. But the Allies were already adjusting, having read nearly all the relevant German traffic in advance. Still, even with accurate intelligence, the battle remained brutal. U-boats launched night attacks and sank several merchant ships. Escort commanders fought ferociously, launching depth charges and radar-guided strikes. Aircraft vectored by decrypts closed in on the Wolfpack positions. Inside German submarines, officers were confused. Convoys repeatedly changed direction at unexpected moments. Allied aircraft arrived in areas where no patrol aircraft had been seen before. Escort ships maneuvered as though anticipating attacks hours before they occurred. The Germans sensed a shift but misinterpreted it. Many believed Allied radar had improved. Others assumed chance had favored the enemy. No one suspected that Enigma, the backbone of their communications, had become transparent. Between March and April, the pressure mounted. For every U-boat that attacked a convoy, two more found themselves hunted. Depth charges rained into the Atlantic. Long-range aircraft equipped with lee lights located submarines on the surface at night. Escort carriers launched continuous air patrols in locations chosen directly from decrypted Enigma coordinates. The struggle intensified until late spring, when the cumulative effect of intelligence-driven operations began to break the coherence of the U-boat fleet, and the climax approached. A single devastating month in which German faith in Enigma would meet reality at last.
By May 1943, the German U-boat fleet was fighting a battle it no longer understood. Signals sent from Kernwall and Berlin
once considered absolute, were now guiding submarines into traps. Patrol lines meticulously arranged by Admiral Donitz dissolved under the weight of Allied counteraction. Every shift in formation, every change in refueling plan, every attempt to reposition wolf packs met a rapid and precise Allied response. The Allies were not guessing. They were reading. When U-boat group Amsel prepared to intercept convoy ONS-5, the German command believed it had orchestrated a decisive strike. More than 30 submarines formed a wide net across the North Atlantic, expecting to cut down the convoy as it sailed into the mid-ocean gap. Yet Allied intelligence already knew the composition, location, and intended movement of these submarines through a cascade of decrypted messages. Convoy ONS-5 entered the area with reinforced escorts, destroyers, corvettes, and the latest in airborne support. Aircraft from Iceland and Newfoundland were vectored precisely where the U-boats were forming. Long-range B-24 Liberators arrived over waters where German commanders believed air patrols could not possibly reach. Their presence was no accident. Their routes came straight from decoded German traffic. As the battle intensified in late April and early May, German submarines attempted night surface attacks, once the most effective tactic of the U-boat war. But radar-equipped Allied escorts, guided by ultra-intelligence, detected them at unprecedented distances. The first warning many U-boat captains received was the crash of depth charges or the roar of aircraft engines overhead. The German losses began mounting in a way that shocked even veteran submarine crews. Boats disappeared without transmitting final signals. Attack groups fragmentarily reported overwhelming pressure. What had been intended as a decisive strike transformed into a catastrophic reversal. It was during these weeks that Enigma's M4, the four-rotor naval version introduced in 1942, also showed its limits. For months, German leadership believed the M4 variant, used by Atlantic U-boats, was immune to Allied decoding. Yet by spring 1943, through captured key sheets, improved cribs, and relentless Bombay operation, the Allies had begun breaking M4 with increasing frequency. Messages once considered unreachable were now contributing directly to tactical decisions. Donitz did not know. He suspected nothing of the real cause. His staff attributed the losses to new radar wavelengths or more aggressive convoy escorts. German investigations even explored the possibility of enemy spies along the French coastline. None considered the possibility that their core communication system had been compromised for months. The turning point came in the days surrounding the final phase of the ONS-5 battle. As the convoy altered course, based on ultra-intelligence, U-boats scrambled to adjust. Dozens attempted to reposition, sending urgent encrypted signals to headquarters. Every one of these messages was intercepted, decrypted, and passed to Allied naval commanders. Escort ships moved into the predicted lanes of approach. Aircraft orbited above likely gathering points. The result was devastating. 12 German U-boats lost in a single operation. In the world of submarine warfare, such losses were unprecedented. Even more alarming for the Germans was the strategic picture emerging across the Atlantic. In May 1943 alone, the Kriegsmarine lost 41 U-boats. Donitz, stunned, withdrew the fleet from the North Atlantic on May 24th, an admission that the Battle of the Atlantic had turned decisively against Germany. It was the moment historians would later call Black May, a month when the U-boat arm, once the greatest threat to Britain's survival, was suddenly and violently broken. Behind the scenes, the reason was clear. Allied codebreakers had reached a level of access to Enigma that left Germany effectively exposed. Every attempt to reshuffle patrol lines, adjust operational principles, or introduce new procedures lagged behind the Allied capability to decrypt messages. Commanders on both sides of the Atlantic now operated with a level of intelligence that transformed the ocean war from unpredictable chaos into a managed, data-driven campaign. And as the U-boats retreated, Allied strategists realized the true scope of their advantage. Enigma decrypts were not simply winning battles, they were reshaping the entire course of the war. The consequences would be felt on every front. The defeat of the U-boats in May 1943 didn't just save a few convoys, it changed the entire war. For the first time since 1940, the Atlantic was no longer a deadly gamble. Germany had lost the ability to threaten the supply lines that kept Britain alive. And behind this shift was the steady flow of Enigma decrypts coming from Britain and the United States. With the U-boats pulled back from the North Atlantic, merchant ships began crossing the ocean with far fewer losses. Convoys stayed tighter and better organized. Escort carriers sent their aircraft further out, searching for submarines before they could attack. Destroyers and corvettes now hunted U-boats instead of running from them. This new safety had a major impact on every other battlefield. In North Africa, Rommel's forces had already been struggling with supply shortages. Ultra-intelligence made it worse for them. Every time German or Italian commanders tried to send fuel, ammunition, or tanks across the Mediterranean, Enigma decrypts revealed their plans. British submarines and aircraft struck these supply ships again and again. When the Axis finally surrendered in Tunisia in May 1943, more than 250,000 troops laid down their arms, many weakened by months of limited supplies. In the air war, Enigma decrypts showed where German fighters were based, how they moved, and when they were running low on fuel. The Royal Air Force and the U.S. 8th Air Force adjusted their bombing missions using this information. They avoided strong fighter zones, targeted key airfields, and prepared for German movements before they happened. Even on the Eastern Front, where the Soviets fought alone on the ground, Enigma still played a role. The Allies did not give the Soviets ultra-intelligence directly, but they used it to judge German troop movements, production problems, and upcoming offensives. This helped the Allies decide when to increase Lend-Lease shipments and when to pressure Germany from other directions. By mid-1943, Allied commanders started to rely on Enigma decrypts as part of their everyday decision-making. What had once been a rare breakthrough became routine. Convoy planners expected fresh decrypts every morning. Air commanders used them to adjust their routes. Naval officers used them to track U-boat movements. Nearly every decrypted message had a real-world effect. A single U-boat sending a position report could shift the entire patrol route of an aircraft squadron. A fuel request could reveal where a submarine would be days later. A weather report could open a new crack in the cipher system. But with this power came a challenge: secrecy. Only a small group of officers knew the real source of this intelligence. If Germany ever discovered Enigma was broken, they would immediately change their system. So the Allies worked hard to hide how much they knew. When a convoy changed direction to avoid a wolf pack, the official explanation never mentioned decrypts. When Allied aircraft suddenly appeared over a refueling point, commanders claimed it was routine search patterns. Sometimes entire reconnaissance flights were staged just to create a believable cover story. Even with all this, the Germans suspected nothing. As U-boat losses increased and Allied actions became strangely accurate, the Kriegsmarine assumed the enemy had new radar, new weapons, or simply better luck. They never imagined their most trusted communication system was being read every day. For the Germans, the situation was becoming more confusing and more dangerous. Losses were increasing. Messages were no longer producing the expected results. Convoys were harder to find. Escort ships were harder to attack, and every attempt to change tactics seemed to fail. It was in this growing atmosphere of doubt and frustration that the deeper consequences of the Enigma collapse began to appear.
As the summer of 1943 arrived, the German Navy was struggling to understand what was happening. U-boats were losing battles they once dominated. Convoys were slipping past patrol lines that were supposed to be perfect. Commands from headquarters no longer produced predictable results. Inside the Kriegsmarine, officers searched for explanations. They looked everywhere: except the one place that truly mattered. Some believed the Allies had invented new long-range radar. Others thought spies were hiding among French dock workers. A few blamed poor weather, bad luck, or inexperienced crews. No one suspected Enigma. Donuts and his staff trusted it completely. They continued to send highly detailed orders across the Atlantic, orders revealing patrol routes, refueling stations, new tactics, and even changes in U-boat production. Every message they sent helped the Allies understand more about German strategy. Every change they made to recover from recent losses was exposed almost immediately. This ripple of intelligence spread into other fronts as well. In Italy, where the war had turned against the Axis, Enigma decrypts showed the movement of German reinforcements heading south. Allied commanders used this information to plan their landings at Sicily, timing the invasion when German units were at their weakest. On land, at sea, and in the air, Germany was now reacting to situations the Allies had already anticipated days earlier. Inside Germany, the confidence once tied to Enigma gradually eroded, though quietly. A few officers noticed patterns that didn't make sense. Why did Allied ships appear exactly where U-boats had been ordered to refuel? Why did British submarines strike Italian convoys at their most vulnerable points? Why did Allied aircraft sweep regions that were supposedly safe? Small investigations began, but they were misdirected from the start. Teams checked for leaks in coastal communication centers. Security officers questioned crewmen in occupied ports. Technical experts reviewed transmitter equipment. None of these inquiries came close to the truth. The idea that Enigma could be broken was dismissed immediately, considered mathematically impossible and operationally unthinkable. Meanwhile, the Allies kept reading almost everything, but they were careful. To protect ultra-intelligence, they never changed tactics too suddenly or too obviously. They masked decrypt-based operations with fake reconnaissance reports, staged scouting missions, and carefully crafted cover stories. Their goal was simple: keep Germany confident in Enigma for as long as possible. As the war expanded, the value of code breaking reached far beyond the Atlantic. In France, Ultra helped prepare the ground for the future Allied invasion. Decrypts revealed how many German divisions occupied the coast, where they were positioned, and how often they moved. They showed shortages in fuel, transport vehicles, and ammunition. They exposed disagreements between German commanders about where the next Allied strike might land. All of this shaped Allied strategy long before D-Day was launched. In the air, decrypts revealed German night fighter tactics, radar frequencies, and reinforcement schedules. Bomber Command used it to plan safer paths through Europe's skies. The U.S. 8th Air Force used it to coordinate raids with fighter escorts at the exact moments German defenders were at their weakest. Everywhere the Enigma system touched, its collapse weakened Germany further. And still, they didn't know. Even after thousands of ships were saved, even after U-boat losses reached unsustainable levels, even after Allied operations repeatedly outmaneuvered German plans, the truth remained hidden. Only after the war would surviving German officers learn that their trusted machine, the device they believed was unbreakable, had been compromised for years. Some refused to believe it at first. Others were stunned by how deeply their operations had been exposed. A few expressed frustration that their warnings had gone ignored, but most had the same reaction: disbelief that a machine they trusted completely had become the very reason their strategy failed. The Enigma had protected Germany for years, but in the end, it had also betrayed them, quietly, repeatedly, and decisively.
The story of Enigma is not only a story of machines or mathematics, it is a reminder of how wars can be decided far from the battlefield, in quiet rooms filled with paper, wires, and people who rarely received credit for what they accomplished. For years, Germany believed their encryption was perfect, They trusted it with submarine movements, battle plans, and the most sensitive details of their strategy. That trust shaped every decision they made. But Enigma was never invincible. Its weakness did not come from the metal, the rotors, or the wiring. Its weakness came from human habits, predictable words, repeated mistakes, and an overconfidence that left no room for caution. On the Allied side, thousands of people worked day and night, often without knowing the full result of their efforts. They solved puzzles, repaired machines, sorted messages, and searched for patterns that might save lives. They worked in silence, under pressure, and without recognition. Many believed they were only doing ordinary clerical tasks. Only after the war would the world understand that their efforts changed history. The collapse of Enigma reshaped the Battle of the Atlantic, opened the door for major Allied operations, and shortened the war by years. It allowed supply ships to cross the ocean safely. It weakened Axis armies in Africa and Italy. It exposed German strategies long before they could be carried out. It turned the tide at sea, in the air, and across Europe. But perhaps the most important lesson lies beyond the war itself. It shows how confidence in technology can be dangerous when it blinds leaders to the possibility of error. It shows how intelligence, quiet, hidden, and often ignored, can decide battles long before the first shots are fired. And it shows how the smallest details, like a repeated word in a weather report, can change the fate of nations. In the end, the Enigma was a symbol of German faith in secrecy. Yet it became a symbol of how secrecy can fail and how the truth, once uncovered, can shape the course of history. The machine the Germans trusted most became the key that unlocked their most guarded plans. And through that opening, the Allies found the path to victory.